Welcome to Robinson's Shadow Stories, where mysteries unfold and dark tales come to light. Dive into the enigmatic world of true crime with our meticulously researched stories, chilling reconstructions, and in-depth investigations. From unsolved mysteries to infamous cases, join us as we navigate the labyrinth of crime, uncovering the secrets that linger in the shadows. Brace yourself for a riveting journey through the minds of our most famous serial killers, true crime stories, and cautionary stories about couples who become obsessed in their relationships, that one of them is willing to commit a terrible crime in the name of love, the twists that keep you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe now, and become a part of our community of armchair detectives, because the truth is always stranger than fiction. This journey isn't solitary, it's a collective exploration. I want to hear your thoughts, theories, and suggestions. Drop your comments below, share your insights, and let's form a community that dives headfirst into the shadows. Together we'll navigate the complexities of these stories, one shadow at a time. So let's dive in. Today's story is about John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy was born March 17, 1942, at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, and was the second of three children and only son of John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robeson. Gacy was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Norwood Park Township near Chicago, Illinois. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performances as a clown prior to the discovery of his crimes. Gacy was close to his mother and two sisters, but had a difficult relationship with his father, an alcoholic who was verbally and physically abusive to his family. His mother tried to shield her son from his father's abuse, which resulted in accusations that he was a sissy and a mama's boy who would probably grow up queer. In 1949, Gacy's father whipped him after he and another boy were caught sexually fondling a young girl. The same year, a family friend began to occasionally molest Gacy, but he never told his father, afraid that his father would blame him. Gacy loved his father but felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes. In 1960, Gacy worked in the city's ambulance service before being transferred to Palm Mortuary. He worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing morticians embalming bodies and occasionally serving as a pallbearer, also taking a management trainee position with the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. Work as a salesman and eventually promoted him to department manager. In March of that year, he became engaged to Marlynn Myers, a co-worker. That same year, he had his second homosexual experience. According to Gacy, a colleague in the JC's plied him with drinks and invited him to spend the evening on his sofa. The colleague then performed oral sex on him while he was drunk. In August 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr. Gacy lured Voorhees to his house with the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films regularly played at JC events. Gacy plied Voorhees with alcohol, allowed him to watch a stag movie, then persuaded him to engage in mutual oral sex, adding, "You have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with women." Over the following months, Gacy abused several other youths, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral sex on him. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and paid them up to $50 each. In March 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacy and charged him with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and the attempted assault of 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacy was indicted on the sodomy charge. On August 30, 1968, Gacy promised one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, $300 if he physically assaulted Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying in court. Schroeder lured Voorhees to an isolated country park, sprayed mace in his eyes, then beat him. Voorhees escaped and reported the assault to police. Schroeder soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating he had done so at Gacy's request. Police arrested Gacy and laid an additional charge of hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees. On November 7, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to 1 count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3 and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting she be awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969. Gacy never saw his first wife or children again. Gacy was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18, 1970, having served 18 months of his 10-year sentence. On February 12, 1971, Gacy was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy who claimed that he had lured him into his car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and driven him to his home, where he had attempted to force the boy into sex. On June 22, Gacy was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct, in response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed that Gacy had flashed a sheriff's badge, lured him into his car, and forced him to perform oral sex. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought a ranch house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in unincorporated Norwood Park Township, Illinois, part of metropolitan Chicago. He lived there until his arrest in December 1978 and, according to Gacy, committed all his murders there. In late 1975, Gacy joined the Clown Club and created his own characters, Pogo the Clown and Patches the Clown, devising his own makeup and costumes. He performed as both Pogo and Patches at numerous local parties, political functions, charitable events, and children's hospitals. Throughout the years of his murders led to him being known as the Killer Clown. Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, 26 of whom he buried in the crawl space of his house. His victims included people he knew and random individuals lured from Chicago's Greyhound bus station, Bughouse Square, or off the streets with the promise of a job with PDM, an offer of drink and/or drugs or money for sex. Some victims were grabbed by force, others were conned into believing Gacy, who often carried a sheriff's badge and had spotlights on his black Oldsmobile, was a policeman. Finally, the police take notice to Gacy. Armed with the signed search warrant, police and evidence technicians drove to Gacy's home. They found Gacy had unplugged his sump pump, flooding the crawl space with water. They replaced the plug and waited for the water to drain. Technician Daniel Genty then entered the 28 by 38-foot crawl space, crawled to the southwest area, and began digging. Within minutes, he uncovered putrefied flesh and a human arm bone. The victims were too decomposed to be pieced. As the body in the northeast corner was unearthed, a crime scene technician discovered the skull of a second victim alongside this body. Later excavations of the feet of this second victim revealed a further skull beneath the body. Because of this, technicians returned to the trench where the first body was unearthed, discovering the rib cage of a fourth victim, confirming the scale of the murders. After being informed that the police had found human remains in his crawl space, and that he would now face murder charges, Gacy told officers he wanted to clear the air. Gacy provided a formal statement in which he confessed to murdering approximately 30 young males, all of whom he claimed had entered his house willingly. He claimed all were teenage male runaways or male prostitutes, the majority of whom he had buried in his crawl space. In January 1979, he had planned to conceal the corpses even further by covering the entire crawl space with concrete. Gacy drew a rough diagram of his basement to indicate where their bodies were buried. 26 bodies were found in Gacy's crawl space over the next week. 3 others were also located elsewhere on his property. On February 6, 1980, Gacy was found guilty of 33 charges of murder. He was also found guilty of sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child. At the time, his conviction for 33 murders was the most for which any person in U.S. history had been convicted. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 50 minutes. The jury sentenced Gacy to death for each murder committed. His execution was set for June 2, 1980. On the morning of May 9, 1994, Gacy was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family. For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC, French fries, a dozen deep-fried shrimp, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. According to published reports, Gacy was a diagnosed psychopath who did not express any remorse for his crimes. His final statement to his lawyer before his execution was that killing him would not compensate for the loss of others, and that the state was murdering him. His final spoken words were reported to be, "Kiss my ass." After Gacy's death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10, 1994, his brain was removed. It is in the possession of Helen Morrison, a witness for the defense at Gacy's trial, who has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths. His body was cremated. Wow, this was definitely a hard story to do. What I'm having a hard time understanding is, Gacy was able to commit all his crimes without proper punishment. The police and courts continued to give him a slap on the wrist, allowing him to continue his sick, sadistic crimes. What's worst is, it took him to murder over 30 people before they did something about it. Every case has its own twists and turns. and we want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Do you have a favorite true crime story? Any theories on unsolved mysteries? Drop your comments below, like, share, and subscribe. Let's unravel the mysteries together. Your insights might just spark the next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.